حي على الفلاح.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم. فقد قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: كل عمل ابن آدم له إلا الصلاة فإنه لي وأنا أجزي به والصيام جنة. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He narrates to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He tells Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that كل عمل ابن آدم له. Every action, everything that a man does, every action that a human being he does is for himself. Meaning every action that a human being he does, there is either a fixed reward or there is a fixed recompense for that action. Whether that action be a good action or a bad action. Illa siyam, except fasting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions that fasting is such an action that is prescribed upon everyone. Everyone, they have to fast when the month of Ramadan comes, except for those who would be excused due to health reasons. But there are a few exceptions. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, the action of a person, every action of a person has their rewards and has their recompense, has their punishments. We all know the reward for salah. We know that it is multiplied even more when a person performs salah in jama'ah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, siyam, fasting, that is for me. He says that I will reward this person based on how I judge his fast. We have a month that is coming up. We barely have a little more than a week remaining for this month to enter. Such a month when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says that when Ramadan comes, فُتِحَتْ أَبْوَابُ الْجَنَّةِ وَغُلِقَتْ أَبْوَابُ النَّارِ. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says that all the doors of Jannah, they are opened in this month. So for 29 or for 30 days out of the year, for 1 month out of 12 months, continuously, all the doors of Jannah, they are opened. And they remain open, calling out to the believers to enter into one of them. وَغُلِّقَتْ أَبْوَابُ النَّارِ. And all the doors of Jahannam are closed. For these 30 days, for this 1 month out of 12 months, all the doors of Jahannam, they are now closed for this period of time. When the moon is sighted for the month of Ramadan, the doors of Jannah, they become open, and the doors of Jahannam, they are closed. And the doors of Jahannam are only reopened when the sighting of the moon for the other month comes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that He will reward us for fasting personally. Now look at this, look at the aspect of this month of Ramadan. The month of Ramadan would be like what we would call a VIP pass, premium edition. All the doors of Jannah, they are open. We can enter into whichever one we please. And all the doors of Jahannam, they are closed. We cannot enter into Jahannam in this period of time. The ulama, they even mention that based on this hadith, that if a person he passes away during the month of Ramadan, then he will never see nor will he touch Jahannam. He will never enter into that fire. Such a month that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has given to us. Some ulama, they also mention that in the month of Ramadan, our deeds, they are multiplied even more. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has given to us a free pass, as you would call it. 1 month for the year. The South African ulama, they choose this month as a month of holidays. They take this month away. They do not do any work in this month. They exclude themselves from worldly interactions. They do not go to business unless if it is a necessity. They say that the month of Ramadan, this is their holidays. And they would spend the month of Ramadan strictly in ibadah, trying to attain Jannah. But we do not have that luxury in the West to say we would take Ramadan off and we would only spend our time in ibadah. We do not have that luxury. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentions that Ramadan expiates a person's deeds, expiates a person's sins. So if a person he fulfills the right of Ramadan, he fulfills the haqq of Ramadan, and he does his Ramadan as best as he can, then all the sins from this Ramadan to the previous Ramadan is expiated, except for major sins. Now, Ramadan is a little more than a week away, and everyone has entered in the stage of last minute preparing. As Trinidadians do, we mostly leave everything to last minute preparing. But most people, they will be engrossed, they will be occupying themselves in buying food, preparing meals to cook for Ramadan, trying to get their Eid outfits. But the ulama, alayhi salam, the ulama radiallahu anhu, they say that the first thing that a person he should do to prepare himself for the month of Ramadan that is coming is tawbah. Because let's think about it, or put it in a perspective that we would normally understand. A person, he applies for a job, he is in need of a job. He goes to this job interview, he succeeds in this interview, and the boss hires him. And the boss tells him that he would put him in an office, a very fancy, exquisite office, and all he has to do is stay away from certain things, a list of things, and do these certain things for me for the day, for these 8 hours. That is all he has to do, and the boss will take care of anything that he wants. The boss will give him anything that he wants. The boss will give him the best of what he wants. Now, when this person, he comes to work the next Monday, he would not walk into such an office, he would not come to work looking shabby, rumpled clothes, untidy hair, not low hygiene, not having a bad body odor. This person, he would not go to work in such a manner. He would not enter this room in such a manner. haven't been given such an opportunity. Likewise, Ramadan is like this office, this metaphorical office that I am speaking about. Ramadan is like this office. As he enters into that office, he gets what he wants. All he has to do is follow a few rules and he gets what he wants. Ramadan is that office. We are the person, we are entering into Ramadan. We would not enter into this office, especially not on the first day, being unkempt and untidy and unclean. Likewise, the ulama, they say to meet Ramadan being in a state of purity. Not in a state of physical purity, but in a state of spiritual purity. In such a manner that a person, whilst preparing for the month of Ramadan, he would perform a lot of tawbah and a lot of istighfar. Istighfar being seeking repentance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And tawbah being ruju' an ma'siyati ila ta'ah, to leave off a person's bad actions, leave off a person's bad habits that he has done. Everyone has bad habits. Such habits that would occupy their time. It could be a good habit as well, but it would be considered as a bad habit in the month of Ramadan due to occupying too much of a person's time. Allama Tibi alayhi rahmah, he goes further into explaining what tawbah is. And he says that tawbah is tarku dhanb li qubhihi, leaving off such a sin, leaving off such an action simply because it is an unpleasant action and simply because it is an ugly action. Now Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he defines a sin. He defines a sin and he says, "Ma haka fi sadrika." He says a sin is something that makes you, it shakes your heart. Your heart is not pleasant with such an action. You cannot do this action and not think twice about it. And then he continues and he says the second part, وَكَرِحْتَ أَنْ يَطَّلِعَ عَلَيْهِ النَّاسِ. So it is such an action that you do and you feel uneasy about it. And you are afraid if a person catches you doing such an action. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says that if a person, he does any of these, any action that draw these two things, uneasiness in his heart, and he does not want other people to know that he does it, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says that is a sin. So when Allama Tibi alayhi rahmah, he says leave off this action due to the ugliness of it, despise this action due to the ugliness of it. That is what Allama Tibi alayhi rahmah, he is speaking about. The uneasiness in a person's heart and the way that you will not want someone to know that you have done this action. You will go to lengths to hide anyone knowing that you have done this action. Then Allama Tibi alayhi rahmah, he mentions that tawbah is azimatu ala tarqi mu'awadati. So he says, after this person he despises this action and he leaves off this action, he regrets this action deeply in his heart that he has done such a thing. He mentions the last part about tawbah is that a person, he makes a firm oath upon himself, he makes a promise to himself that he would never return to such an action, he would never do such an action anymore. He would never do this action in his life again. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He he is known as Ar-Rahman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is known as the most merciful. It is mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he divided his Rahmah into 100 parts. And one part of that Rahmah was descended upon the face of the earth, was sent and was spread on the face of the earth. So the mercy that a person he would see from a parent to a child, the mercy that a person he would see as a superior person being to those below him, the mercy you would feel towards your own children, you would feel towards your peers, all that and more, even from the time of Adam alayhi salam until now, is still only one part of Allah's mercy. So after this person he makes this oath and he decides not to do this action again, that person might think to himself, if he ends up committing this action another time, he might think to himself that I have promised and I have sworn that I would not do this action again. However, I still did this action. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will not forgive me. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is Ar-Rahman. We cannot even conceive the amount of mercy that passes on the face of the earth in one day. Much less for the amount of mercy that has passed and the amount of mercy that has been on the earth from the time of Adam alayhi salam till now. So much so to go even further from the time of Adam alayhi salam till Qiyamah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has 99 more of that. And that is just simply to put in a similitude so that we could have a perspective, so that we could have an understanding. So this person, even if he commits this action again, then he should not think to himself, he should not worry to himself that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will not forgive him. However, whilst a person, he should not worry about it, he should not think to himself that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will not forgive me. This does not mean that this person, he can now go and commit as much sins as he wants, or he can do as he wants and expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive him. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says that a person that thinks like this, a person that thinks that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would forgive him regardless of what action he does, and he goes on to do a lot of wrong just expecting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would forgive him. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says this person is truly a foolish person. So with these few words, inshallah, I hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he grants us forgiveness and he grants us his mercy. And I hope that all of us can meet Ramadan, inshallah, being in a state of purity spiritually. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.